Chandler Smith could be headed to Richard Childress Racing in 2025, and LaJoie could be headed back to Ware Racing in 2025. What's going on, guys? It's Daniel, and welcome back to our video. We got some NASCAR and other motorsports stories discussed today on the channel. Let's go ahead and just jump straight into those really quickly. We're first going to take a look at a ton of paint schemes that have been revealed over the course of the last couple of days. Let's go ahead and just jump straight into them. The first paint scheme we're taking a look at is Sammy Smith's 2025 Pilot Flying J scheme that we'll see throughout the 2025 season. I gotta say, with the old font they're bringing back, this does look pretty good. I like the white, I like the red, I like everything about it. The black's a little bit interesting to me, not the biggest fan of that, but other than that, I think everything else about the scheme does look really awesome and really, really good. The next paint schemes we're taking a look at is Ryan Preece and Brad Keselowski's 2025 Consumer Cellular schemes that we'll see throughout the 2025 season. Schemes look very similar to the 2024. I think it does look pretty good on Ryan Preece's car, and I think Keselowski's does look really solid. We'll see how they can do in this paint scheme in 2025. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Chase Elliott's 2025 Napa Auto Parts scheme that we'll see throughout the 2025 season. This looks better than even last year's. I like the yellow streak. I like they're taking the Y out. I think the blue looks fantastic. This looks really awesome. Looking forward to seeing the racetrack throughout 2025. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Alex Bowman's 2025 Ally scheme that we'll see throughout the majority of the 2025 Cup Series races. I think the scheme definitely has some big promises for sure. I think there's some people that don't like it. Personally, I disagree with most people. I think his scheme does look pretty good. I think did a pretty awesome job on it, and we'll see what Alex Bowman can do out on the scheme in 2025. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Sammy Smith's 2025 TMC scheme that we'll see in select races throughout the 2025 season. I gotta say this one, not as big a fan of this one as the Pilot Flying J, but I do think this car really, really works, especially with the old number font. I think the orange looks alright. I think the black looks decent. We'll see what Sammy Smith can do in this scheme. And the final paint scheme we're taking a look at is Brendan Poole's 2025 Frontline scheme that we'll see in 4 races in 2025. This scheme looks awesome. Alpha Prime Racing usually does a fantastic job on their paint schemes. This one's no exception. It looks pretty great, and I'm looking forward to seeing the racetrack in the 4 races they run it in 2025. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Spears Manufacturing. As it was announced on Tuesday that Spears Manufacturing has officially become the entitlement sponsor for the Cars Tour West Series. Spears Manufacturing has had major association with Kevin Harvick over the years when Kevin Harvick was getting his boots into the NASCAR series. When he drove the 75 truck back in the day, Spears Manufacturing was the sponsor, and they've had major affiliation with NASCAR and the Cars Tour for a very, very long time. So it's really exciting to see that Spears Manufacturing is going to be the entitlement sponsor. I gotta say, the logo they've got it for it does look really awesome. I think did an amazing job on it overall, and I'm really definitely looking forward to see it. It looks pretty great and pretty awesome, and I'm excited for the Cars Tour West season in 2025. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about FDNY Racing. As it was confirmed on Tuesday that FDNY Racing will officially be returning in select races in 2025. They've got 4 races confirmed at this time. They're going to run the Daytona opener, then they're going to run at Pocono, then they're going to run at Lime Rock Park, which we already knew, and they're going to run at Talladega Super Speedway. They do have some other races that they may end up running, though, in 2025. It sounds like Rockingham could be a potential possibility. I think I did also see maybe Nashville was on the potential itinerary of races they could end up running. For Daytona, it's going to be Brian Doza behind the wheel. It is still unclear at this point who the other drivers are going to be. I know they're looking for someone who's bringing a lot of sponsorship and funding for Lime Rock Park. It's pretty cool to see that FDNY Racing is going to run more races than normal. It's pretty good, and hopefully whoever they get can bring the sponsorship and funding. I guarantee it's probably going to be someone that brings a lot of funding who'll be behind the wheel of that truck. But it's pretty cool nonetheless to see that FDNY Racing will officially be making their return in 2025. Really exciting and awesome stuff, in my opinion. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about F1 viewership. It was reported by Jeff Gluck, I believe yesterday or Tuesday, that for 2024, Formula One viewership was at 1.1 million viewers, which is about how much they were in 2023, and of course in 2022 it was at 1.2 million. Now the big notes was that of course they had the most watched Formula One race in the US in 2024, basically in the history of Formula One in the US, when 3.1 1 million people tuned into the Miami Grand Prix. A big caveat to that, though, is that the NASCAR Cup Series race at Kansas was being rain delayed at the time, and weren't even sure we were going to get the race in on Monday, until Monday, so luckily we got that race in. Formula One is definitely starting to stagnate in the United States. Now, obviously, I think with Cadillac coming in, I think that will help grow Formula One once again. And I do think the racing product, I will say in Formula One, while it was not great by any stretch of the imagination, I gotta say there were certain times where the racing I thought was not that bad. I think it had its moments for sure. I think there was potential, but I think that fans and sometimes fads, because Formula One, let's be real, is kind of a fad at the moment, I think fads eventually die out. Now, if promotion continues sticking around long term, I think you could see Formula One stick around and be successful long term. But unfortunately, I just don't see that being the case. I think Formula One at some point is going to die out on its popularity in the future if things are not changed in the long-term future. But again, I think it's decent viewership for the year. It is very, very solid, and at least the viewership wasn't bad for this year. I think bringing Cadillac in, though, is going to help save Formula One, at least for the short term, future. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about the Wood Brothers. Now, yesterday, if you were on social media, you probably saw the Wood Brothers putting out a post in regards to something really, really cool. They changed their header of their thing from 74th anniversary to 75th year anniversary. Now, why is that significant? Well, next year is going to be the 75th year in Wood Brothers history. The Wood Brothers have been around since 1950. But one of the most incredible teams out there over the last 75 years. You think about the success they have with drivers like David Pearson, Buddy Baker, other drivers like Kyle Penny went to victory lane for their organization. Cale Yarborough won quite a few races for the team. This team, and of course Tiny Lund, I think won the Daytona 500, I'm pretty sure, for this organization in 1963. This is one of the most successful teams in NASCAR history. Now, obviously, in recent years, they have struggled, but I think it's really cool to see the Wood Brothers bringing back the organization again. They, of course, this year picked up their 100th victory with Harrison Burton, and I think that them bringing Josh Berry in this upcoming season, they've got a really great chance and opportunity to do that in 2025. Congratulations to the Wood Brothers on making it 75 years. It's really exciting. Congratulations on a ton of success for that program, and we'll see what they can do in 2025 with Josh Berry. I think they definitely got quite a bit of a chance to have a lot of success and potential to run really, really great in 2025 with Josh Berry. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Sebastian Montoya. As it was announced on Tuesday early morning that Sebastian Montoya will be joining Prema in Formula 2 in 2025. That name is going to sound familiar because that is the son of the legendary driver Juan Pablo Montoya, who of course won races in Formula 1, IMSA, multiple World 24 victories, multiple NASCAR Cup Series wins, and other racing championships, including 2 Indianapolis 500s as well, and an IndyCar championship not too long ago. Sebastian Montoya, I believe, will be 19 years old or 20 years old in 2025, but he's been racing over the course of the last couple of years, really since around 2019 to 2020. And Sebastian's been having quite a bit of success over the course of the last few years, and I think he did race in Formula 3 and was pretty good in that as well. He is going to have a lot of pressure, though, going into 2025. I believe he's part of the Red Bull Academy, so maybe in the future this could lead to him going to Red Bull, even though Liam Lawson is expected to get the second seat. But I think it's really cool that Sebastian Montoya is getting an opportunity and a chance with Prema. They're one of the top dogs, of course, in Formula 2, and I think that he has a fantastic chance to win the championship this year, but I think there's also going to be a learning curve for him because he hasn't raced as much in Formula cars as he had in the past. We'll see what Sebastian Montoya can do, and we'll see if he can run really strong and really solidly with the Prema organization in Formula 2 in 2025. We'll see what he can do this upcoming year and season. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about the Chili Bowl Nationals. As it was announced on Tuesday late afternoon that the Chili Bowl Nationals feature has made some changes to how long the race is going to be for the A main. It is going to drop from 55 laps to 40 laps in 2025. Now, originally when I saw this change, I was questioning it. But then I thought about it for a couple minutes, and I'm like, actually, this does make a lot of sense. One of the big problems with the race being lengthened from 40 laps to 55 laps is you get rubber on the track. And when rubber comes on the track, it doesn't really create the best racing product. I think that shortening a race from 55 laps to 40 laps is not only going to make the racing product a hell of a lot better for the Chili Bowl, but I think it's going to make the intensity a lot stronger as well. You're going to have 15 less laps to have a chance and opportunity to get up front. Yes, the race is going to be a lot quicker because I think they get around the track around 15 to 16 seconds, but at the same token, same time, if it's going to make the racing product a lot better, I think it's a really, really good change. I think, again, I watched the race last year, and that's one of the big problems I had with the Chili Bowl, is the fact that it took way too long. When the rubber came in, the racing just did not end up being good, and the racing product generally sucked. So I think this is a really good change, in my opinion, for the Chili Bowl, and very happy they've made this change because I do think it's truly going to make the racing product a little bit better when you go there in 2025, considering all the big names that are going to be running that we talk about here in just a short little bit. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Catherine Legge. As it was announced yesterday morning that Catherine Legge will be running the 2025 Chili Bowl Nationals for Abacus Racing. She is going to be teammates with Santino Ferrucci, and I believe Kaylee Bryson as well is going to be her teammate as well. This will be the first time that Catherine Legge has ran the Chili Bowl. I don't think she's had a lot of open wheel. Well, of course, she's had a lot of open wheel experience, but she doesn't have a lot of experience racing on dirt. So this is a really good opportunity for her. Abacus Racing's had quite a bit of success. Santino Ferrucci, I think, made it pretty far in the past with this organization in the Chili Bowl Nationals. I don't think he's ever made it to the A main, but I think he's made it to the C and D main in the past. And then, of course, Kaylee Bryson. Kaylee Bryson, she has had quite a bit of success. She has made it, I believe, to the A main a couple times, and she's had quite a bit of success in dirt racing over the years as well. So she's going to have two really good drivers that she's going to be working with in the Chili Bowl. Now, obviously, this field for the Chili Bowl is continuing to get more and more stacked. I think Catherine does have a really good chance. We are thinking there's going to be a few more big names that haven't been announced at this time that I think will run the Chili Bowl, but I think it's really amazing and just great to see that someone like Catherine Legge, who is one of the most successful female drivers in motorsports history, I think it's really amazing, really awesome, and pretty great to see that she, in fact, will be running the 2025 Chili Bowl Nationals. I can't wait to see what she can do, so I think she's got a fantastic chance and a really strong opportunity to be really competitive and run up front. I think she will be very competitive, definitely, in the Chili Bowl in 2025. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about the Busch Clash. Now, this is brought up by the NASCAR Nostalgia account on Instagram, and apparently it sounds like, according to what they have heard, that Cup inspection will take place on Wednesday and Thursday of the week of the Clash. So, like January 30th or 29th is when inspection is going to take place, and then they believe will not touch the cars until they get to the racetrack on Saturday when they have the heats and all that stuff, and then, of course, they will get on track, I think, for practice at that time. This is definitely very, very interesting, but also at the same time, it does make a little bit of sense, right? Of course, having inspection a couple days prior, I think does make definitely a little bit of sense, considering Bowman Gray is about an hour away, I think, from Charlotte, I'm pretty sure, or maybe even less than that. That's basically a home game for the teams. And it's really a lot easier to just do it a little bit earlier in the week and then not come back to the racetrack for a couple weeks, because you only have to drive about an hour away down to Bowman Gray from where most of the shops are in the Charlotte area. I think that there's going to be some more stuff announced on the Clash. We still are waiting on the format at this time for the Clash for 2025. But I got to say that having inspection on Wednesday and Thursday is very, very interesting to say the least. And I think it will create, basically, you're going to have your stuff ready by Wednesday and Thursday. Otherwise, you may not be able to go out and down there and race. That's something that could happen, but we don't know for sure. Nonetheless, I think it's very interesting that they're doing it that way. They haven't done it that way before, I'm pretty sure, or at least in recent years they haven't done it, where they've had it in the middle of the week. So I think it's a very interesting change for sure in regards to that. And I think it's a very again, I think it's really interesting that they decided to go ahead and have the inspection taking place a little bit of a different time. Very interesting stuff, in my honest opinion. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Connor Daly. Now, it was reported by Nathan Brown from the Indy Star yesterday afternoon that apparently Connor Daly he has big sponsorship from Polka Dot. And according to that sponsorship, he apparently had a deal to run full-time for Sam Hunt Racing in the NASCAR Xfinity Series in 2025. Apparently, he had a deal for, I think, $4.3 million to join that organization full-time in 2025. And he also had a deal to run the Indy 500 also in 2025. So what happened? Well, apparently the polka dot sponsorship unfortunately fell through for Connor Daly, and that's one of the big reasons why he's not going to be driving for Sam Hunt Racing at all probably in 2025. To be honest, that is a really, really big shame for Connor Daly. It would have been an amazing opportunity for him because I think Connor Daly did have decent success in Xfinity. He had that pretty good run at Indianapolis. I think he finished in the top 10. And for a guy that doesn't have a lot of NASCAR Xfinity Series experience, to me, because he's really good on ovals, he did a fantastic job in that event. But when you lose sponsorship and funding, and I think this is the second sponsor that's left Connor Daly, I'm pretty sure BitNow, who had associated themselves, of course, with him, apparently they also left Connor Daly. So that's two pretty big sponsors that no longer associate with him. So the big question is, where's Connor Daly going to go in 2025? Well, it sounds like he won't be going to NASCAR. It sounds like Juncos Hollinger Racing is the most likely landing spot for him in that second car. Of course, Stingray Robb is bringing a lot of funding to the table for the organization. So if he does go somewhere, it probably will be Juncos Hollinger Racing. But I think it would have been pretty cool to see him get the chance and opportunity to run in NASCAR full-time. I think he would have had a lot of fun. Obviously, the aggression is definitely a lot more in NASCAR than it is in IndyCar. But I think it would have been pretty cool to see him have a chance and opportunity to run with the polka dot spot, especially if the polka dot sponsorship would have been able to hold up. I think it would have been really awesome and great to see him have a chance to work in NASCAR full-time. But obviously, unfortunately, as it works in motorsports as a whole nowadays, you got to have a lot of sponsorship and funding if you're going to want to run full-time. And unfortunately, with the sponsorship falling through for Connor Daly, he's not going to run for the team. So now the big question is, who is getting the Sam Hunt Racing car? Well, it sounds like it's probably going to be Dean Thompson. It does sound like also there is a chance they are going to run two full-time cars potentially for 2025, but it does sound like that Dean Thompson is most likely going to be the only full-time driver at that organization in 2025. I would probably expect the likes of Tyler Reddick, John Hunter Nemechek, maybe other people in the Toyota camp like an Eric Almirola perhaps, to get a chance and opportunity to drive for the team at least on a part-time basis in 2025, along with Corey Heim as well. But I think it's disappointing to see that Connor's not going to be racing full-time in NASCAR in 2025. I think it would have been really awesome if that happened, but I'm also not most surprised and shocked to see this. If you lose sponsorship and funding, you're most likely not going to end up having a seat for these big series going forward into the future. So we'll see what happens down the road, but unfortunately will not be racing in NASCAR probably at all in 2025. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about the National Fairgrounds. As it was reported by Bob Pockrass yesterday that apparently they still have not made an official confirmation on what is going on with the National Fairgrounds, and the stuff and decisions from 2023, which is almost about 2 years ago at this point, is still not been officially decided from the board, and there's still a lot that needs to go on for that to get approved. But he knows something very interesting in the second tweet that he puts out. He says, if it is approved at some point in 2024 or 2025, it is going to take around 18 to 24 months for it to basically get repaved. So the earliest we could see racing won't be 2026, but the earliest we could see racing at the National Fairgrounds maybe as early as 2027. Now, obviously, like I mentioned, I've already said, they have to get it approved in order for it to happen. Now, what's been going on? Well, obviously, NASCAR has been trying to get National Fairgrounds to host NASCAR Cup Series dates. Once again, the last time the NASCAR Cup Series race at the National Fairgrounds was back in 1984. The last time a top tier 3 series ended up racing there was, I believe, in 2000. Obviously, the ARCA Menard series, I think, races there, and ARCA East races there. But outside of that, the big NASCAR 3 do not race there currently at the moment. And they're trying to get the National Fairgrounds renovated so they can host NASCAR Cup dates in the future, which people like Chase Elliott have been in support of it. I think even people like Kyle Larson and Kyle Busch have also been supportive of the National Fairgrounds coming back. And even Darrell Waltrip has been trying to get it back as well. But obviously, it all has to get approved. You've got people in this city that basically are against it, which I gotta say, if you're complaining about the sound, the track has been there for 120 years. It's been there basically since 1904. So I don't know why you're complaining about a track being there that's been there for a very, very long time. I don't understand complaining about that. But I really hope in the future that the National Fairgrounds can come back. I think it would be, again, as much as I like National Super Speedway, and I think the race has been really, really good there, I think bringing back the National Fairgrounds does make a ton of sense. And a question will be, when do I predict it will come back? The earliest I could see it coming back is 2027, but it's got to get approved in 2025. If it isn't approved in 2025 and it takes all year for it to get approved, it may not be till 2028. And at that point, you're getting longer and longer and longer and waiting. And it's going to take a long time for it to get approved. At this point, though, I really hope things can get worked out and sorted out so we can, in fact, see racing at the National Fairgrounds, because I truly do want to see racing back at the track. We'll see what happens with the National Fairgrounds going into the not-so-distant future. And now we're going ahead, jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about the Haas factory team. As the owner of the team confirmed on SiriusXM NASCAR Radio, the 2025 NASCAR Xfinity Series crew chief lineup. And according to what the lineup is going to be for 2025, Jonathan Toney, who crew chief for Cole Custer in 2024, will be the crew chief for Sheldon Creed in the 00 car in 2025, while Jason Trinchero will be the crew chief for Sam Mayer in 2025. These two crew chiefs are definitely very interesting. Jonathan Toney has been working, of course, with the Haas team for many, many years, all the way back in like 2005 and 2006, and has had a lot of success with Cole Custer over the course of the last couple of years. Cole Custer, of course, won the championship in 2023, won 2 or 3 races that year. And then, of course, in 2024, while he didn't win the championship, he still got 2 victories and made it to the championship 4. I think Jonathan Toney is a very, very solid crew chief. Now, he, of course, is going to be working with Sheldon Creed, who still is looking for his first career NASCAR Xfinity Series victory. I do think that Sheldon Creed has a really great chance and a strong opportunity to get it done for sure, but he still is looking for that first win in NASCAR Xfinity competition. But he still right now has the most runner-up finishes in the history. I don't know why people say he sucks. Sheldon Creed is still a pretty good driver, but he does need to step up and get that win. I think Jonathan Toney could definitely lead him to doing that for sure. As for Sam Mayer, they're bringing in Jason Trinchero. He has had a lot of success in NASCAR Xfinity competition in the past. He did work with, I believe, AJ Allmendinger a couple years ago before he moved back up the Cup full time. And Jason Trinchero also worked with other drivers in the series, and I got to say he's a pretty solid crew chief too. And he didn't do as good with Chase Purdy, but I think Chase Purdy was more the problem than anything else. That's why Chase Purdy most likely will not be having a seat at all in 2025. But I think that Sam Mayer will be able to do pretty good with this team too. I think Sam Mayer, who of course is bringing a little sponsorship and funding with him, that's one of the big reasons why he's getting the seat for 2025 at this organization. At the same time, though, I think it is a pretty solid crew chief lineup for next year, and I think they're really building a program around both these guys. If you want my prediction around Haas factory team, I think both drivers will make the playoffs next year, and I think both will go to victory lane at least once or twice. I'm not expecting them to be championship threats or contenders like when they were with SHR, but I do think that this team does have a lot of potential to be pretty solid and pretty successful, and I think that both of them are going to work very well together in 2025. And we'll see what ends up happening, and we'll see if the Haas factory team can have a lot of success next year. They're going to be the top 4 team, so hopefully the Fords can have a lot of success in the NASCAR Xfinity Series in the 2025 Xfinity Series season. We'll see how it ends up going because there's a lot of great competition. Connor Zilisch, Carson Quaffle, Christian Eckes, Nick Sanchez, Justin Allgaier, Austin Hill, even though he's got a new crew chief. And then, of course, a couple of people like Jesse Love. You've got other people in the series, too, like Sammy Smith as well, and other big names as well coming back, like William Sawalch going to be up there, Taylor Gray. You've got a lot of really good talent in NASCAR Xfinity competition, and I think the series is very, very stacked for the 2025 season. And now we're going ahead, jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Ty Majeski. Now, I did a video covering this on the channel yesterday, but it was reported by Bob Pockers yesterday that Ty Majeski has lost his appeal of his $12,500 fine. Now, why did Ty Majeski receive a fine? Well, he missed Championship 4 Production Day for the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series. Now, why did he miss Championship 4 Production Day? Well, because he was going to vote for the President of the United States and vote in the general election. How the appeal basically stated was this, that they felt like that the media obligations for Championship Day are very important, probably the most media obligations out there. And while I do understand where they're coming from in that prospective aspect, I really think that the general election, who you're voting for in the country, I feel like that is a lot more important, in my opinion, than basically going to a media day for a championship that really doesn't matter. Especially when Fox did a horrendous job with the coverage, not a pre-race show at all, not much of a post-race show at all, because Fox hasn't given a shit about NASCAR really in recent years, just to be real and honest. And I think that this is a really, really bad decision for them to appeal. I just feel like that this is a penalty that wasn't necessary. I don't know what the Wisconsin law is for early voting. If you're from Wisconsin, let me know in the comments. But I don't think that a driver should have been penalized at all and gotten fined at all for going and voting in an election. It's a civic duty. I don't care about the early voting stuff, because I just think it's so stupid that Ty Majeski got a $12,500 fine for basically going and voting. Again, NASCAR does not employ him. You know who employs him, NASCAR? Thorsport Racing. It's one of the reasons why your guys are getting sued right now, because you guys are overpowered in so many different ways. I just think this is a terrible decision on NASCAR's end. I don't agree with them. The appeals panel there, the appeals panel is a lot older people too. I saw Lake Speed on there, which I don't understand that. I just think it's really stupid that he got in trouble for going and voting in basically the general election. Again, I think the general election is a lot more important than basically an arbitrary media day that doesn't really matter, especially when the people who cover the race did a shitty job and a bad job. I think it's really stupid penalty, in my honest opinion. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Steve Phelps. Now, a couple days ago, Jordan Bianchi did a really cool interview with the president of NASCAR, Steve Phelps. And basically, Steve Phelps brought up a lot of different things surrounding things like the charter deal, schedules, another manufacturer again. We haven't even got a timetable when that is coming. But one thing that's been getting a lot of attention from this is to talk about the playoffs. Now, Steve Phelps, and shout out to Eric for putting up a really cool quote on this and putting it all up on his channel, but Steve Phelps basically went on to defend the NASCAR playoff format, basically saying that Joey Logano deserved the championship, and quintessentially defending a lot of things around the playoff format, the win and you're in, and basically defending a lot of things about the racing product and the playoff format as well. Now, he does admit that they are talking about making potential changes to the playoff format and making some pretty big changes. They're going to have all their stakeholders, they're going to have drivers, they're going to have teams, and they're also probably going to have TV executives and personnel that are probably going to be there to make decisions on that, like NBC. Now, I got to say this right there. One of the things that was mentioned in that as well was that the fans wanted this, and most fans wanted winning to matter a lot. Yeah, I think fans definitely wanted winning to matter more, but I don't think fans wanted winning to be the most emphasized thing. And I guarantee you go back to fans who've been fans for a long time, who were fans before we got the playoffs or even some sort of postseason in 2024, Steve. I think most fans didn't want a playoff system. They wanted basically winning to matter more, because that's one of the issues I will say with the Winston Cup era, was winning races didn't really mean much in the Winston Cup era. And I think winning should matter. I agree with that. But I think you could have not added a postseason, and you could have found a way to award more points to the winner of the race. An extra 10 to 15 points perhaps, because that would have been probably the difference if you want a race to winning the championship. Because consistency was the most important thing. And I know people don't like, oh, we had a good points day, but guess what? It has led to the win and you're in stuff. The big issue I've had with this playoff format from the beginning is three big things I've had an issue with. Drivers winning a race getting locked in the playoffs. There's no reason a driver should be able to win the Daytona 500 and should be able to lock their way into the playoffs. You're telling me that last year Ricky Stenhouse Jr. could get his way into the playoffs? No, absolutely not. The second thing is the eliminations. What's one big thing that came up this year? Race manipulation, because of this elimination format. We saw manipulation on a lot of different grounds. The Hendrick of William Byron, and then of course Ross Chastain and Carson Osmar getting involved in that, and then them getting in trouble. Bubba Wallace getting in trouble for it, and then Christopher Bell getting in trouble in a way for Wall riding up at the top. You could consider that race manipulation. And the other big thing is a one race championship. You could be good at one track, and you can set your car up for that track and run really, really good, especially since we go to Phoenix twice a year. I just think that that is a terrible thing, and that led to Joey Logano winning the championship. Again, Joey Logano won the championship in the way he did, and he won 4 races. But Joey Logano also had the worst average finish for a champion with a 17.1. He had the least amount of top 5s for a champion with 6 top 5s, and he had 11 top 10s all year long. Bubba Wallace had more top 10s, I believe, than Joey Logano this year. I think he had more top 10s. And he had the same amount of top 5s. Ross Chastain had more top 5s and top 10s than Joey Logano. Chris Buescher had more top 5s and top 10s. All 3 of those drivers did not make the playoffs. Joey Logano did. Joey Logano was not good this year, and he won the championship. Whatever changes they're going to make to this playoff format, though, they need to be good. I get why he wants to defend the system. I get it's understandable. But at the same token, same time, I think there need to be massive changes made to the playoff system. So I think the current playoff system is a joke, and it's not a good system to determine a NASCAR champion. Because guys like Kyle Larson, Chase Elliott, and Christopher Bell and Tyler Reddick were all objectively better than Joey Logano. Same with Ryan Blaney and those guys. They were all objectively better and had better seasons than Joey Logano, in my honest opinion. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Christopher Bell. Now, Chase Briscoe got some payback because he officially confirmed himself that Christopher Bell will officially be running the 2025 Chili Bowl Nationals. It basically will be running for the first time since 2021 when he did not, actually 2022, when he has not run in 2023 and 2024. Why did he not run in 2023 and 2024? Let's go back a couple years. Joe Gibbs had pretty much put a ban on drivers racing in dirt over the course of the last couple of years. They could not run really any dirt races at all. Now, I think during that Clash weekend, Christopher kind of walked his comments back on that about a year or so ago, but they were denied an opportunity to go race dirt racing on a full grand scale because Joe Gibbs has never been a massive fan of that. Well, that all changed about a month or so ago when Jeff Gluck had reported that basically Ty Gibbs wanted to go do some dirt racing, and I think Ty Gibbs is a big reason for this change coming into place. That is one of the big reasons why Chase Briscoe and Christopher Bell can go out and run dirt races a lot more consistently now. And Christopher Bell is going back to the Chili Bowl Nationals. He is joining a very stacked lineup for the Chili Bowl in 2025. Kyle Larson is back in the Chili Bowl. Tanner Thorson is there this year. Connor Zilch could have ran. He's not running it. SVG could have run. That being Shaman Gisbergen could have run. He's likely not running it. Catherine Lake, who we talked about a second ago. Guys like, of course, Logan Seavey, a two-time winner of the event in a row. Rico Brewer, I think, is going to be back. I saw Brad Sweet's name on the entry list. Tanner Thorson, like I've already mentioned, is on there. You've obviously got other big names that are going to be down there, like Kyle Busch. Ty Gibbs is likely going to be there. Ricky Stenhouse Jr., Chris Wyndham, and Justin Grant, Thomas Meserol. A lot of big names that are running this event. And now you've got Christopher Bell, who is going back to the Chili Bowl Nationals in 2000. And JJ Elliott, too, forgot to mention him. And now you've got Christopher Bell, who is going back to run the Chili Bowl. I'm really excited about this. I think Christopher Bell legitimately has a really good chance and opportunity to get his fourth Chili Bowl win, which would put him in a very elite class. Now, again, he's going to have to go up against guys like Kyle Larson and Chase Briscoe and really good dirt racers as well for the win because it's one of the most stacked Chili Bowls we have seen in recent years. But I think Christopher Bell has a really great chance and a really fantastic and strong opportunity to go out there and get the Chili Bowl victory in 2025. I think it's going to be fun to see what he can do because I think he will have a really great chance and a very strong opportunity to win the Chili Bowl Nationals in 2025. I think he's going to be good enough to do it. I really think that he's going to be competitive enough to be up there. I think he's running for Chase Briscoe's team, I'm pretty sure. So I think that he will have a very good chance and strong opportunity. Pretty excited to see that Christopher Bell will be running the Chili Bowl Nationals. And we do think Ty Gibbs will also be there in 2025. Pretty excited to see Christopher Bell will be back at the Chili Bowl Nationals in the 2025 season. Excited to see what he can do next month at the Chili Bowl. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about the 2311 Racing and Front Row Motorsports lawsuit once again, as we've got another update in the last couple of days. Bob Pockrass reported yesterday that apparently there is a new judge that is coming into place for the 2311 and Front Row lawsuit. According to Bob, it sounds like there has been a new lawsuit that has been reassigned to Judge Kenneth Bell, as Frank Whitney, who has been the judge throughout the lawsuit currently at the moment, basically has recused himself from the lawsuit, basically going into retirement. Now, apparently Frank Whitney had association with NASCAR, to my understanding, in some sort of way. Apparently someone in his family had been working for NASCAR, and also apparently he's been involved with Michael Jordan, too, back in a court case in 1992. Now, obviously, the teams were fine with Frank Whitney being part of the case. He originally tried to recuse himself from this court case and all of the lawsuit, but the teams like 2311 Front Row, with drivers like Bubba Wallace, Tyler Reddick, and then, of course, Todd Gillen, Zane Smith, who will be there most likely, Noah Gragson, they were like, no, you can sit here and continue hosting it. But then, of course, Frank Whitney, basically, he would have been the one that made the decision in regards saying that the teams did not have enough evidence to bring to the table, and then going on NASCAR's side throughout the whole entire thing. Now you've got new eyes that are on the case, and this could definitely change the way things are going, because so far, I will say, throughout this lawsuit, I think NASCAR has had the advantage. They've gotten a lot of things they've wanted throughout the lawsuit so far, and I feel like the team's been put at a little bit of a disadvantage, to the point where they've had to file for a second preliminary injunction. Now, I don't know much of the story on Kenneth Bell, who is the guy that, of course, is coming in for the lawsuit, but I think that if he is someone that could be side on the teams, this could put the teams back in a really good situation. Now, obviously, we still do not know at this time when the court case is going to be for the new preliminary injunction. That is still to be determined at this time. And I'd have to think things have changed now because we have a new judge coming in for the lawsuit. Now, obviously, if the preliminary injunction does come into place, there is a very good chance and strong opportunity that this case could go in the way of the teams. If the preliminary injunction is denied for the second time, despite the evidence that they are expected to bring, which we do think the 23rd front row are going to bring a lot more evidence this time around than they brought the prior time, I do think then they have a really good chance and opportunity to win this for sure. But then if they lose it, then of course that puts it back in NASCAR's hands. And NASCAR stated not too long ago that they wanted this case dismissed and they wanted them to lose the court case. Which, if that's the case, that puts the teams in a very difficult and a really, really bad position overall. At this point, I still think NASCAR is in as the advantage right now when it comes to this, unfortunately. But if the evidence they can bring to the table, that being 24 front row, is good enough to present, and they can go out there and get the evidence exactly correctly, I think they've also got a chance to win their side of the court case as well. So I think it's going to be very interesting to see how the rest of this plays out, because I do think both sides have brought up really strong arguments throughout the lawsuit. I think NASCAR's brought some really good evidence on their end, while I think the teams have also brought really good evidence on their end as well. Of course, arguments back and forth throughout the lawsuit among other things, the antitrust lawsuit among other things, and even, of course, NASCAR accusing basically Curtis Polk of pulling antitrust stuff as well on his own. So I think it's been very interesting to follow this for sure, and I think there'll be more information coming out, and we'll probably have the court date officially announced in the coming weeks. We're hoping it can happen before the end of the year, but I have to think the lawsuit, especially with now getting so late into the year, and only being about 20 days left of the year, I would have to think the court date will probably be either the end of this year, probably the last week, or probably the beginning of 2025. Otherwise, I think this lawsuit is going to last a lot longer, and I think things are going to get interesting in regards to that lawsuit in the not-so-distant future. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the first of two major stories in today's episode as we're talking about Corey LaJoie. Now, if you're on Instagram a couple days ago, you probably saw a post from Corey LaJoie where he was basically on vacation. But there's basically some interesting stuff that I noticed in his post. And Reddit also brought this up as well. Basically, Corey LaJoie might be hitting at his 2025 plans. If you take a look at the time that this was posted, it said 68 days. Now, currently, this is on Tuesday, so now we're on Thursday. We are 66 days away from the Daytona 500. What this tells me is that there's a really great chance and opportunity that Corey LaJoie will likely be back with Rick Ware Racing in 2025 for the Daytona 500. There's been a lot of speculation. It's between him and Cody Ware at the moment on who is going to get that full-time seat at Rick Ware in 2025. Now, it's no secret that basically they're going to have two cars at some point throughout 2025, one full-time car and a second part-time entry, because one of those Rick Ware charters has been sold to RFK, as of course RFK Racing is expanding to a three-car operation in 2025 for Ryan Preece, who will drive the 60 car. We still don't know who the crew chief is for Ryan Preece. Currently, at the moment, it's not Chad Johnson, though, considering he's going to Legacy Motor Club. But going back to Corey LaJoie, it sounds like he may be behind the wheel of the number 51 car for Rick Ware Racing in 2025. Now, a lot of people have their thoughts on Corey LaJoie, and people do feel like that Cody Ware probably should get the opportunity over Corey LaJoie, and I do disagree with that. Look, do I think Corey LaJoie had a terrible season in 2024? Absolutely, without question. He absolutely had a terrible season in 2024, to the point that he was so bad throughout the 2024 season that Corey LaJoie lost his ride near the end of the season and got replaced with 7 races left to go and got traded over to Ware Racing at the end of the year because he had so many bad wrecks, he got into so many mistakes, and never really took responsibility for the incidents that he had on the racetrack. You look at the Kyle Busch incident at Pocono where he just didn't take any responsibility for causing that big wreck. Watkins Glen not taking really any accountability at all, and that's one of the reasons why he lost his seat at Spire throughout the end of the year and got replaced by Justin Haley, who was running really strong Rick Ware. But then he got to Rick Ware the last couple of races, and I got to say he did a pretty solid job. I think he had multiple top 20 finishes, and it seemed like he was doing a really, really great job with the organization. Now, it does need to be noted that I don't think Chris Lawson is going to be back with the 51 team next year. Unknown who I think the crew chief will be, because I think Chris Lawson is probably going to go to front row at this point. But I think that Corey LaJoie at Rick Ware does make a lot of sense again, and I think that Corey can definitely rebuild it. Plus, he's not going to have all this pressure to really, really perform. Rick Ware is not a team that you're expecting to go out there and contend for wins and contend for championships. You're not expecting that from Rick Ware Racing. You're kind of expecting that more nowadays for Spire Motorsports, who has a lot more pressure on them. They're going to get a Tier 1 support in 2025. They're going to have Justin Haley over there, Rodney Childers, Matt McCall's going over there. So that team is in a much better position than Rick Ware Racing is. Now, I still think Rick Ware Racing is a team that can really, really improve over time and get a lot better. And I think that Corey LaJoie can be the driver who can build that program up for sure. Do I think he's going to do better than Justin Haley with Rick Ware? I'm not exactly sure. He may. You never know. I think Corey LaJoie will do better, though, at Rick Ware than he did in Spire in the last year. Now, obviously, the other big question we have to ask is if he doesn't go full-time, I'd have to think he's probably going to be part-time with the team. I think he will be with Rick Ware. There was talk about him, of course, going to McAnally Hilgeman Racing at some point, but obviously that died down because all the full-time McAnally drivers are signed. You've got, of course, Daniel Hammer going to drive the 19 truck. You've got Connor Mosack going full-time and Tyler Ankin returning. They are going to have a 4th truck that will be part-time throughout the year. Will be full-time with multiple drivers behind the wheel and probably even some Cup guys in the Chevy camp, like maybe other people like a Kyle Larson perhaps or Chase Elliott could get behind the wheel of that truck at some point in 2025. But I think Corey LaJoie going to Rick Ware makes some sense. Now, we have to understand some of the other big questions around silly season. Obviously, this is one of the 2 full-time rides that we don't know anything about at this time. There is going to be a 3rd front row car for 2025, most likely, and it sounds like Zane Smith is going to get that seat, and I think that's where Chris Lawson is going to go next year. I think Chris Lawson will be crew chiefing for Zane Smith most likely in 2025. That's what I'm expecting at this time, but I do think we're going to see that happen where I think he will end up going there in 2025 to Front Row Motorsports. But going back to Corey LaJoie, I think LaJoie was one of the better options you had. I know that some other names have been brought up as potential possibilities for the team. For the 2nd car, I think you're going to see multiple drivers behind the wheel. I think you'll see Harrison Burton behind the wheel at some point. I think the Sheldon Creed, Sam Mayer are going to get opportunities. Probably not Haley Deegan at this point, but I think you'll see some other big names get behind the wheel of that organization in 2025. Again, there's still some other big questions around the silly season that do need to be announced for next year, but it sounds more and more likely that Corey LaJoie will be the driver of the number 51 car for Rick Ware Racing in 2025. We'll see how we can do in 2025. And now we're going to ahead, jump on to the final major story of today's episode as we're talking about Chandler Smith once again. Now, we've talked about Chandler Smith quite a bit on this channel over the course of the last week because he's been one of the big hot topic rumors and conversation drivers around their future in NASCAR. Now, it was confirmed about a week or so ago, I think it was confirmed on Friday by Matt Weaver, that Chandler Smith would not be returning to Joe Gibbs Racing in 2025 as that organization is completely filled up for the 2025 season. We, of course, know that William Swalch will drive the number 18 car. We already know that Taylor Gray is going to drive the number 19, and Brandon Jones will likely drive the number 20 car for the team in 2025. There is going to be a 4th All-Star car for Joe Gibbs Racing for drivers like Eric Almirola probably Ryan Truex and Mark Truex Jr., and then, of course, we'll see guys like Ty Gibbs, Denny Hamlin, Christopher Bell, and probably even Chase Briscoe as well get behind the wheel of that car at some point, and maybe some other drivers like a Justin Bonsignor getting a chance and opportunity to be with that program in 2025. So that meant that there wasn't going to be an opportunity for Chandler to go back to the team, despite the fact that Chandler had a really, really strong and great season with the organization in 2024. Didn't make the championship four, but had the best average finish in the field. Had a really strong second half of the season. Didn't have a lot of finishes outside of the top 10, and just had a really strong year as a whole. Now, the good news is for Chandler Smith fans like myself is that it does sound like Chandler Smith is going to have a ride for 2025. It is currently rumored at the moment right now that Chandler Smith could be headed to Richard Childress Racing in 2025. That's been the hot topic rumor going around at the moment. And it sounds like it may not be a full-time seat at Richard Childress Racing, but it sounds like it may be a part-time stint with RCR in 2025. We talked about this on the channel on Tuesday, but it was confirmed on Monday that, of course, Richard Childress Racing is going to have a third part-time seat in NASCAR Cup competition in 2025. We have heard that Will Brown will likely make 2 starts in that second seat in 2025. We have also heard that Austin Hill will be probably in that car at some point, and probably even Jesse Love as well. But one name that I've continued to hear is Chandler Smith being at RCR, and many people have been expecting it as well in the industry, that he's going to go to Richard Childress Racing probably on a part-time basis. At least Chandler Smith will be racing in NASCAR, but I feel like that he deserves a full-time opportunity. Now, could RCR open up a third full-time seat in Xfinity? That is certainly possible. Maybe somehow they get a charter and open up a fourth car. That's definitely true. But if he's going to RCR, that is going to be less resources that the team is going to be putting into like cars like Kyle Busch. Talking about Kyle Busch for a second, Kyle Busch is going to be a free agent at the end of 2025 and may test free agency at the end of next year. So that could lead Chandler Smith, if he's very successful enough and can bring the sponsorship with him, that could definitely lead him getting there. But one of the reasons that I don't think Chandler Smith is full-time in the first place next year, sounds like, is because he lost a lot of sponsorship funding that he had going into this year. And NASCAR nowadays, especially in the Cup Series, but even the Xfinity Series and the Truck Series, you've got to bring a lot of sponsorship and funding to the table if you're going to run full-time. About a year or so ago, he had a ton of funding for a team like Colleague Racing. He had enough funding to go full-time with that team. And then, of course, he left that organization in 2023 to go back to Joe Gibbs Racing. And he did have a lot of success, got multiple wins. I think what happened and why he didn't end up going to Joe Gibbs Racing and Cup, because I think that's where he was headed a couple years ago, was the Stewart-Haas Racing fire sale. His name got brought up as a major possibility at one point, that being Chandler's. But when the SHR fire sale happened, Chase Briscoe became available. And this, no offense to Chandler Smith, but I do think Chase Briscoe overall is a much better driver than Chandler Smith is. Chase Briscoe in Xfinity got 9 victories in one season with Stewart-Haas Racing. Chandler Smith hasn't done that in a single year. He's only gotten 2 wins at most in the years he's ran Xfinity Series competition. That being said, I'm glad to see at least that Chandler will have a ride in some sort of capacity for the 2025 year. I think he does, like I said, deserve to be full-time racing in NASCAR. But if you don't bring the sponsorship and funding to the table, you're not going to end up getting the seats that you're going to desperately need to run full-time. Now, could he end up being full-time in the future? Absolutely. But I think with how much talent Chandler Smith has, how good of a driver he really, really is, he deserves to be full-time in NASCAR without question. And I really hope down the road and into the not-so-distant future that someone like a top-tier organization and team can go and see what Chandler Smith has accomplished, and they can give him that full-time chance and opportunity. So I think he does have the potential to be a really good driver in the sport. Do I think he's got Cup Series championship potential? Probably not like I did a few years ago, but I think that he could be someone they can give a really good opportunity in a really, really strong car and be very, very competitive in. We saw what he could do part-time at Colleague Racing, got a top 20 in his debut at Richmond, and he's shown potential in the lower series as well. Won a lot of races with Kyle Busch's Kyle Busch Motorsports, and then, of course, he won a lot of other races as well over the years. So I really hope going into the not-so-distant future that someone can be able to find the funding for him, that he can end up going full-time once again. But again, if you want to race full-time in NASCAR, you got to have a lot of funding and a lot of sponsorship. And unfortunately for Chandler Smith, he doesn't have the full funding and sponsorship that he's really, really going to need for the 2025 season. That's, again, one of the massive major reasons why Chandler Smith will not be full-time in 2025. But it sounds like he will be with RCR in some sort of capacity throughout the 2025 year. We'll see if he does truly go to RCR in 2025. So, that is going to today's NASCAR news and motorsports news episode. I want to thank you guys for watching. Please subscribe to the channel, notifications on, so if I win a video, it does go live on my channel. Follow me on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and support me on Patreon as well. Let's go some more of that and comment your thoughts below on today's episode. You think Chandler was headed to RCR? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And what thoughts about LaJoie likely headed to Ware? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If any major news that breaks throughout the next couple of days, we'll discuss here live on the channel. Tomorrow, there's probably going to be NASCAR Xfinity Series winner prediction and something like that dropping on the channel. And also a Kyle Busch video will likely be coming out at some point tomorrow as well. Then on Saturday, we'll probably have Xfinity Series playoff predictions. Actually, probably release Xfinity playoff predictions. And then some other great content dropping over the weekend as well. And then, of course, next week, we'll probably have a news video on Monday as we close out the remainder of 2024 and head into 2025. And we also saw people like Haley Deegan, Shane Van Gisbergen, Carl Edwards, Kurt Busch, Bubba Wallace, lawsuits, Kyle Busch, Kyle Larson, all that stuff in the coming weeks. So anyways, like I said, I want to thank you guys for watching today's episode, and I'll see you guys next time for more great, awesome NASCAR content and other motorsports content on the channel like this. Take care, everybody.